What is gravy, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. There are many reasons to decide not to go back for platinum. The trophies could be very hard or incredibly time consuming, or could ruin an otherwise enjoyable game. And so I spent some time the last few days going over my trophy list and highlighted 5 games that I'm probably never going to go back to. I'd just like to point out that I reserve the right to completely change my mind about any of the aforementioned games, and by viewing this you are therefore bound to not comment should I do so. But if you're going to enjoy this video, then go ahead, hit that like button, and if you're new, consider subscribing. Now let's get to it. We're kicking off this list with the most recent addition, Mafia 3. As is usually the way with videos, this is the one that inspired the entire thing, and funnily enough is one that until a couple of weeks ago I was still working on. But unfortunately, because I'd already played through the game before I started trophy hunting, I'd made this considerably more difficult for myself. Basically, I'd need to do 2 entire playthroughs in order to achieve the different outcomes that the list requires, meaning I would have played through this game 3 times. And as much as I enjoyed my first run, there's just something I'm not willing to do. The main problem I have is that the game feels slow. Very slow, which when you're enjoying the story from everything's new and shiny on your first playthrough isn't so much of an issue. I didn't really notice, but going back to it now is very clear. It really does drag its heels at every turn. The world is vast, but traversing it doesn't feel good. The missions are long and multi-layered, but rarely spark any actual interest. And in what universe did someone decide to not put fast travel in an open world this big? I do not want to spend half my playtime driving, riding, sailing, running across this map for another fetch quest. If I was starting from scratch and the whole game was new to me, then it would be fine. But because I've already played through this game and all of the faults are coming up in this first playthrough of the 2 that I need to do, it's just not going to happen. So it's staying on the unfinished pile. Okay, next up we have Vampire, however you want to pronounce it. It's not the first time I've brought this game up on this channel, but it is also the only game in this video that I actually went for the platinum from the start. And that's possibly where I went wrong, but we'll get to that. I wanted to enjoy this game so much because the premise was so cool. The grimy Victorian atmosphere is something that I can absolutely get on board with, but unfortunately the gameplay just didn't click. Couple that with the fact that you have to do a pacifist run for at least one of the playthroughs, which makes you A, underleveled, and B, is completely against every instinct that I have, and I'm just not going to do it. Which is a shame, because the world mechanics themselves are pretty damn cool. If you neglect a district or kill too many of its NPCs, it can fall into disrepair, and that negatively impacts the game, and helps flesh out the inner struggle of trying to be a vampiric doctor, the 2 most diametrically opposed professions there is. Yes, I just referred to being a vampire as a profession, and what? This is the thing, I probably would enjoy just playing through the game, living that sweet vampire power fantasy, but at this point, the entire thing has been soured by my initial experience, and I don't think there's ever going to be a time where I'm going to try this platinum again. Now, as I've told you all before, for the longest time I was a massive sucker for Ubisoft checklist type games. I platinumed the last 3 Assassin's Creed games with mostly no issues, but I have never been able to get into the Watch Dogs series. So when I picked up Watch Dogs 2 for a ridiculously low price, and I figured that was my best chance of giving it a shot, I didn't have many high hopes. I don't know what it is about this series, but I just don't click with it at all. And I mean, I don't really need to say more than that, do I? Fine, I'll say more. I'm sure they're not as bad as Valhalla in terms of trophies. I mean, that game definitely needed to end much quicker than it did. But I just don't enjoy the gameplay. And when you're playing through one of these Ubisoft games, and there's so much just stuff to do, not liking the gameplay is the first and last nail in the coffin, isn't it? So, Watch Dogs 2, I'm sorry, but it's definitely you, not me. penultimate entry of the day, and another pretty recent addition to the list. Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor is a game that I tried so hard to enjoy. Even before I started trophy hunting, I bounced off it, and it sucks. The idea of an Arkham-style game set in the Lord of the Rings universe is one that should be right up my street, but no matter how much time I put in, I just can't get into it. The gameplay is fine, but the open world just feels empty and lifeless. And I understand it's set in Mordor, it's not supposed to have car chases or balrogs flying around, but it really doesn't feel like there's anything to do in the open world outside of missions. And if I'm just doing missions, why does it need the open world? Just make it linear. Cut out the crap. And while I'm destroying my credibility, why not take a jab at the Nemesis system? Yay, that's going to go well. I mean, technically it's great, and I'm sure it adds a lot to the game in terms of, you know, USP and things like that. But I didn't care about any of them at all. Why would I want generic Orc number 7 to be my main antagonist in a certain section of the game? Why? Just give me thought out, specific characters that are well designed and have motivations, and yeah, I'll be sorted. Hey, come on, is the pitchfork really necessary? Right, so we have one game left on this list, and it is here for an altogether different reason. Primarily because I feel if I went back to get the Platinum Trophy in The Last of Us, my fond memories might not be there afterwards. Before you start moaning at me, hear me out. This game came along at a very specific point for me, and I feel like if I went back now with collectible guides and 10 tips on beating Survivor Plus, I just wouldn't have the same experience. When I played through part 2, I used a collectible guide from the start, and as much as I loved that game, narrative decisions and all, it took me out that little bit. And while I could go back now and play through again without any of that and have a really good time, I can't say the same would have been true the other way around, and I don't want to take that risk with The Last of Us. That game, like it did for a lot of people, hit on so many levels that my desire for it to stay that way completely outshines my desire to get trophies. That's just the way it is. Also, those multiplayer trophies look like a massive grind, so sod that. But that's going to do it for this video. Let me know down below in the comments any platinum trophies that you're not going to go back for. I'd really love to know. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I shall catch you all next time.